Alrighty, welcome back, ladies and gentle jammers, to the Chupacabra's lair. I'm your host, Larry, and we're back for another edition of Larry Does Ludum, taking a look at Ludum Dare number 39 games, with the game jam theme of running out of power. And to start us off today in this trifecta of games, we've got Power Cube Station Box, a jam entry by Nuevo Mundo. And this is a game that gives me a very nostalgic feel for some of the bizarre handheld game devices that were made in the 90s that I played as a kid, and also probably some of the ones that are still made to this day. And by that I mean, do you remember those game things that you could buy that kind of looked like a Nintendo 64? Or like a Game Boy? But they only played one game and it was like built into the screen or built into the little miniature game console. Well, this gives me that vibe, and it drives me crazy because while those were not especially great gaming systems, they were something I feel like everyone's parents probably bought it for them at some point because they're like, it's a game, it's cheap, whatever. Worst case scenario, you play it twice and throw it away on the car ride to the relative's house. So let's jump in here today, playing Manibello, which is actually a game within a game. And this is a little cartridge that slots in the top, and here we are. We've got a cute little dancing, kind of looks like a tank, actually, that jumps from platform to platform, trying to get to a star up there at the top of the screen. But uh-oh, well, it looks like we've already run out of power. Sort of the jam theme, so to speak. So how do I get this thing back up and running? Well, we've got a crank knob here, a power button here, and a bunch of other crazy alien gizmos on the side. I guess we're just gonna have to generate our own power. And this definitely reminds me of some of those bizarre, almost crazily hooked together mad scientist level devices that you could play with in the 90s. And it's almost kind of like you're trying to buy like a game console from the Coleman camping company where you've got to like power it yourself while you're out camping. But if you're camping, why are you trying to game kind of a deal? It's a little bit of an oxymoron. So we're going to try and get to this star over here before we run out of power. There we go. But again, we've run out of power super fast. So I guess let's try this option here. We can shake the pants off of this thing. Come on, Larry, it's like a martini. Shake it. Shake that moneymaker, you crazy Chupacabra. You can do it. We gotta get to those stars and, I don't know, save the world from Captain Starface or something. I don't know. Manibello looks like quite the Italian-ish plumber. He's got a little mustache here. So that's charged up. Let's hit the power button again. Alright, so we got some moving platforms in this game. Can I... There we go. Hop across, up. Darn, still not enough power. Although this battery does say I've got plenty of power. What's the deal? Come on now. This is what happens when you use the cheap rechargeable batteries instead of going with the Duracell batteries. Every time, the Energizer Bunny just screws me. Okay, well that's good enough. Let's hit the button again. I gotta save the little star people. Darn it. Falling down again. I feel like those old folks on the Life Alert commercials. Alright, well what about this little nipple thing down here at the bottom? Maybe this does it. Looks like I can just spin my mouse back and forth. I will say that this one and the shaking one work a lot better for me because I actually have a trackball mouse. So there we go. And let's see if that works. Hit the button again. Uh-oh. The game is bugged out, and now the platforms aren't moving. Uh-oh. Well, I think there's more to it there, but I'm probably not going to be able to complete that level. But no, I really like this as a game concept. It really reminds me of that two-person party game, Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, where you had to have one person read out the instructions to how to stop a bomb, and then the other person actually had to enact those instructions. And I really get that vibe from this, because you have to rotate a physical device with digital tools in order to crank a knob, and this is actually pretty awkward to do even with a trackball. You have to hit a button, and and then you have to turn it all the way back around as fast as you can before the power runs out. And I could definitely see this becoming a full-fledged game where you have to deal with this environmental obstacle of a physical device, but after you play through it, you have like a story segue where the kid that you're playing as, or the adult or whatever, maybe an alien from the 90s, like finishes this game, finishes playing Manny Bello, and then they have to go out and buy another console, and each console or each device has a more and more challenging set of external controls to it. Like, let's say, like, you go from charging up a device, this is kind of like little Timmy's first portable console, to having to, like, rewire it on the go. Like, maybe there's actually, like, a story option where you become a crazy techno video game pirate, and then you have to learn how to open up a back panel, like, right here on the edge, and rewire some things with a mini game so that you can play a game your friend gave you without buying it yourself, like a cracked copy. I don't know, but this seems really compelling. I really love games where you have to play around with a physical object, and that is almost more of the game itself. It's like something about this janky, sort of slow controls trying to maneuver this and then quickly get back to what you were doing before time runs out or you explode or something is great. But you definitely would need a lot of variety and sort of a simplistic, cutesy setting as to what all is happening here. That said, I mean, the graphics are good, everything behaves itself pretty well, except for the fact that those little platforms on that level broke, and I can't seem to get them to behave again. But this is great, I like this. The graphics are nice, the little background art is very nostalgic for weird devices like this. I dig it. I honestly just... Oh, wait, it's working again, it's working. Alright, hold on, I gotta get across this... Dang it, I didn't get across the gap. But no, this was good. I like this concept. I'd be curious to see where you go with this, and I would really love to play an expanded version where you gotta mess with different consoles. Maybe you gotta go to your friend's house and play against your friend with his broken console, because you know your friend. They always give you, like, the broken controller when you go to party at their house for a sleepover. So very nice work, Nuevo Mundo. I like this. It's very nostalgic and very... It definitely reminds me of Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, and it's definitely maddening how quickly you run out of battery. So that's cool. I think I would just want it to be, this battery to be a little bit more representational of what's on screen, or maybe just a battery up here to tell me how much time I had, so that if I'm in a good spot in the game, I could go back and, like, keep shaking it and keep the screen on without having to click the button or anything. That would be kind of cool. And other than that, like, I like it. Nice work. Next up, we have a more romantic game. A tale of two star-crossed lovers that want nothing more than to be reunited. Yes, we have Electric Lovers, made by Virtual Turtle Studio. It's a compo entry all about trying to reunite a power cable with its adorable and receptive power plug. Or outlet, whatever kind of terminology you prefer to use. But essentially what this game is we are a sad and lonely plug who has been stolen away from our lovely and beautiful power outlet, and we must journey across this dangerous, endless expanse of rocks and obstacles in order to find her and plug our little schnauzer right on into her. Although I'm just kind of assuming that there's a gender here, when these are just inanimate objects. I think the only thing that could be gender-ish would be the fact that a power plug has got some phallic connotations with the little prongs. And our job really is to try and avoid our own deadly and murderous tears. Because they are made of water, and if they hit our exterior, well, that could cause us to short out. And this really feels to me like it's a kind of a combination of two different elements. We've got the element of a platformer, where we've got to run around and avoid obstacles like these tears. And it also kind of reminds me of an endless runner, where you're never really fully committed to or maintaining momentum because you're always concerned that something might smack into you from the environment and eventually destroy you. So it's a constant turmoil with this game where you're just trying to avoid getting smacked in the noodle and also stay aware of your surroundings and get up on top of platforms so that you can keep going. And it's actually really hard to try and avoid these tiers while you're trying to also orient yourself in space. And I think if there's one thing I would say is that the tiers could be a little bit more reliable for the directions and the patterns that they're going to fall in, because sometimes they can really be erratic to the point where it's almost impossible to try and avoid them while also getting up enough momentum to get on to the next platform. Because some of these platforms move really quick, the tiers move really quick, and if I'm timing the tiers while I'm jumping onto a platform, then I can very often run face first into my own death. And that's part of the challenge, I understand, but it's just a little bit hard to anticipate those things moving while also paying attention to where my character is standing in three-dimensional space, if that makes sense. The other thing is that it's really hard for me when I'm moving and the tiers go out of camera to tell exactly where they are. Now, the big way that you could handle those is if you were to give them a distinctive shadow, not in the background. You can see that the lighting of this engine shows them really nicely in the background, but it would be really nice. Ooh, there's water down here. Okay, so there's two options for environment. We can walk along the tops of the platforms or along the ground. But what I was saying was, it would be nice if the shadows were below me for me to see where everything is going, as opposed to having to look around the environment while I'm also trying to orient my body. So right now, like as the tiers fly up, the shadows should get bigger and bigger as they get closer to the ground, and I should be able to tell by simply looking at my feet where these tiers are going to hit me if they've gone out of camera distance or camera angle or so forth. Beyond that, I like the concept. Like, it's a good concept, and it's definitely not one that I see very often, where your character is its own worst enemy, so to speak. I think this would be kind of interesting if you included some other elements or entities in the background, other electronic devices that might be getting really freaked out by the fact that you're spilling water everywhere. Sort of Brave Little Toaster style. That was always a favorite movie of mine from when I was a kid. You could have like a vacuum cleaner, maybe not a toaster for that example, but all sorts of things that would obstruct your ability to move forward and possibly injure you in some respect to provide you with a wide variety of different obstacles. And maybe you have secondary objectives as well, like maybe your beautiful love has been disabled because there's an electrical storm outside, and you have to find your way to the fuse box in order to turn her back on so she can live. Otherwise, you'll get to the end and you'll have to turn back. Aside from that, I mean, you could throw in a little bit of a story to illustrate to people what's going on in this world and what your connection is to your lovely plug and why she is such a dear and precious thing to you. You got lots of options there, and I think you could totally explore this more. And I would also say that because the movements are so simplistic, this is one of those games that could very easily translate into a mobile game. Just needs some refinement, and I think you're good to go. So nice work, and I look forward to seeing more stuff from you in the future, because this was Virtual Turtle Studios' first entry into Ludum Dare, so we hope that you stick around for a long time and keep making delicious games. Because that's how you grow and you learn, is by building stuff, making stuff, and watching it break when people play with it. All right, last up we have the final boss by Enfio Fentov, as you can see down here with this Twitter handle. And this is a jam entry that's all about losing your powers at the end of a bullet hell shooting roguelike game where you can amass a number of different power-ups in order to defeat the last boss. We've reached the final section, and now the boss has said to us, "Haha, Larry, You may be a fancy space warrior, but I'm going to take everything from you. Not just your space family, but your space powers too. And there'll be nothing you can do about it. So essentially what's happening is we have a bunch of cool buffs from a game, as if we played through the game, got a bunch of roguelike buffs that all stack together, and slowly we start to lose them over time as we battle this boss. So here we are, we got a bunch of cool stuff, and here's the boss in the center, and he is going to try and kill us, and we're going to try and murder him. But our goal is to find him in all of these different side rooms before we run out of all of our abilities, or we get blasted to Kingdom Come. And this definitely has all those pieces of like a really nice bullet hell shooter. You've got a bunch of crazy buffs, like a shield that regenerates periodically, some split shot bullets that you can use. And unfortunately, we are going to use them, or lose them, not use them, just as we are starting to begin to get comfortable with them and figure out how all of them work. And the first thing that tends to happen is we lose our fancy shield that gives us a leeway when fighting this bad Mamma Jamma, because he shoots off massive waves after waves of energy that can sometimes catch you unawares. And we don't have a ton of health. We only have a little bit that's portrayed in the upper left-hand corner. And once we lose that, we just die, and we have to start this whole incursion over again. And it's going to take us a little bit of time to beat him. I think the goal of this game is that we lose most of our powers by the end to provide an ever-increasing challenge as we lose our moxie, our magic, our mojo, all of our cool science fiction-y gear. Which would be really a shame, because we got like a cool spacesuit and a cool multi-beam blaster. Unfortunately, like a lot of classic bullet hell shooters, I often find myself getting confused and losing track of my character and running into enemies or other bullets and winding up dead long before the end. But that's fine. I mean, we've basically seen what this game has to offer, and I do like it. There's something about this that's always been a fun concept to me. The idea of playing a game from reverse, starting at the end and working backwards and undoing all the things that we have worked to accomplish as the main character. Now, the trouble in some games when you try to play around with this concept is that it doesn't always make sense. Now, it did okay in Castlevania games, where you started out the game super powerful vampire hunting guy who's about to get cursed, and then you meet up with either Death or Dracula, or I guess in that case it was Alucard, and then you lose all those amazing powers, and you have to start back over from scratch at the beginning of the game, which can be kind of awkward and a little bit galling, because you just get to see all these cool powers that you eventually get to have, and then they're snatched away from you like a bit of a tease. So I do like that. The trouble is usually how you implement that. I've played games where you start at the end, where you defeat the boss, but then for whatever reason, you have to go back in time to undo it, and it's trying to share with you the story from the beginning of the game, where you've ended the story, but it's failing to create character progression as you progress through the different chunks of the story. So you gotta be careful that the whole concept fits together well and actually makes a bit of sense. Otherwise, you're just gonna leave players really confused, and it's really gonna be annoying. So just try to play with that sort of concept without making it too confusing as to why you're here and what you're doing. Now, in this case, this game is all about the end of your journey. This is the final stand. This isn't trying to create a long-term narrative that makes sense after a while. This is just, this guy killed your family. You're here to end him no matter what happens. So you're just going to zip, zap, zoom around and blast him no matter how many of your cool, awesome technology that you use. If all you have is a slingshot and a pistol, that will be enough to battle this guy and try to destroy him. So the other thing is, I see a lot of the classic hallmarks of a good roguelike in here. We've got an orbital right now around our character's body that deflects different bullets. That's something I've seen a lot in games like The Binding of Isaac. And you've also got like a shield that can temporarily stop blasts and then it'll have to recharge for a little while. We got multi-shot, which is always fun. Like, multi-shot is a really fun ability, and it really lets you feel like you're a super powerful spaceman. Some of my favorite games were some of those bullet hell shooters that I played on places like Newgrounds. And one thing you need for that to feel really good is you need them to feel like it's a unique gun that you've either never seen before or just feels really satisfying to blast enemies with, which you don't always get. And there are a lot of enemies in here. I think one thing that I need in a lot of bullet hell shooters anymore is I feel like I need something to help me slow down time. Because if I haven't been playing a lot of shooters like this recently, it can be a big pain in the booty to try and dodge everything unless you've played through this game from the very beginning and it ramps up steadily. Which is not something you're going to get if you're trying to simulate the last stand of our gallivanting space hero. I understand the objective, it's just, maybe like a temporary time slowing ability that might be one of the last abilities that you lose would be kind of cool. So that would give you somewhere to go to get used to things as you first get introduced to the game. I think also having some logic in the game to not have enemies spawn directly on top of you would be nice. But otherwise, this is a nice package. It's a cute, kind of interesting concept. I'd be interested to see if you decide to do anything with this in the future. I'm not really sure where you'd go with it, though. Mostly because every other time I've seen this implemented, it's always been kind of bad, or kind of boring, or kind of nonsensical. So if you're one of the first people I see to really figure out how to start from the end and work your way back, so to speak, I would be pretty impressed. So that's gonna be it for this one, ladies and gentlemen. I've been your host, Larry the Chupacabra. I hope you've enjoyed this series that's been ongoing so far. And if you want to submit your games to my little list of games that I'm going to be playing all throughout and also after Ludum Dare voting period has ended, you can find that link in the video description below. And for anyone else who wants to play these games, you can find the links to their download pages on the Ludum Dare website in the video description below. And until next time, I will catch you later. Have a good one, everybody, and toodaloo.